Emanating from the piney woods of East Texas, this is the Ricky Lynn Gregg Show. RLG has been playing music since the mid-70s. Ricky Lynn Gregg was the very first country artist to have a website and the first Native American country artist signed to a major label. In the 1990s, he had count them, six top 10 CMT videos. He had 3 studio albums, including one that reached the top 40 on the Billboard charts in 1992. He has had 3 top 75 Billboard singles, including the number 36 If I Had a Cheating Heart in 1993. And of course, almost 30 years later, he is the current and reigning 2017 ETX Music Guitarist of the Year. Guys, this is the Ricky Lynn Gregg Show.
Careful what you wish for, it might come true. Or and if it does, what are you gonna do?
Welcome to the Ricky Lynn Gregg Show.
Welcome everybody around the world listening and watching here on ETX Rocks, the Ricky Lynn Gregg Show. Today's really special for me because this man that I'm about to talk to is a mentor of mine. At the age of 15, he came to me at a concert that I was lucky enough to open up for him, and he gave me the biggest kick in the pants. He said, "Stick with it. I think you got it. You'll get somewhere." I lived on that for 5 years until I actually got to be dear friends with him, and along the way, got to be in several bands with him. He's a Texas legend. He's a great band leader, and he's a great bassist and a great guitarist. My friend, Donny Hyles.
My brother.
My brother. It's nice to have you on the show,
It's
Donny.
great to be here, man. It's great to see you, too.
Thank you. It's great to be seen, and it hadn't been easy, but during my course of my heart disposition, Donny was very helpful in getting me back on stage. It's not his fault. He did not push me, but he certainly encouraged me. I still have a couple of procedures to do, and I want to get back with Donny and play with his wonderful band, Shinebox, which is kind of the way we ended. And I'm sorry to say that I canceled a couple of shows because of AFib. But Donny, where do we start? We've got so much history, 4 decades.
Well, we start at the beginning somewhere.
Why don't we? I want to start by saying that I used to see Donny before I was able to play a guitar, to open for him at 13. He would play the Gregg County Exposition Center with First State Bank. And, as we talk about, Donny, our heroes, when I got my first interview, I said, it was Al DiMeola, Jeff Beck. But really, there was guys like Randy Nunley and yourself. And I remember at 13 buying y'all's 45. It's not easy to say.
Yeah, a lot of people might not even be aware of what a 45 is. Back in the day, before the internet, if you wanted to buy music, you had to buy a vinyl disc, either a big one or a little one, to listen to on your record player. That was all you had.
But it was golden. It was a great thing to have.
Oh,
it was 2 songs. You had to get one of those little clips. But it was it's not easy to say. And the other side was King Snake.
With the great Terry Salyer on drums.
The great Terry Salyer on drums. I think before Shannon got in the band, Brian.
That was Mike Farmer. That actually played on those tracks.
Let's talk a little bit about Randy, because he really was. I wanted to be Randy Phelps. Randy Nunley.
A lot of people wanted to be Randy.
He was muscular. He sang better than, or equally as good as Mark Farner from Grand Funk.
Mark Farner was a huge influence on Randy too.
Oh my God, he was just an amazing voice, amazing character. During your time with him, because y'all had some great concerts, 2020 Club. I remember walking in and they were playing Roundabout by Yes. Go check that song out, Roundabout. Yes. And of course they had Shannon Day on keyboards at that time, and he had a thing called Mellotron. Tell me about those days. Did you guys feel like y'all were moving towards stardom?
Those were great days, and Randy was the kind of musician that made you want to raise your game, because he always raised his. A marvelous singer, a marvelous guitar player, and a great songwriter as well. And anytime that we played together, when it was Randy and myself, along with Terry and Shannon, that band really pushed all of us. We all pushed each other to do our best every time that we got together to play. And my experience with Randy, we lost him way too soon.
Yes.
He passed in the 1980s with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and at a very young age, and it's very sad, and he's still missed to this day. But Randy is one of the first people that impressed upon me the diligence that one has to have to play music. You have to practice your craft. You have to keep a positive mental attitude. You have to keep yourself healthy so that you can perform at a high level, at the level that you demand of yourself. And all musicians can relate to that. And that's why you see in today's world so many musicians, no drugs, no alcohol, no substances of any kind, just for that reason. And I think Ricky feels the same way that I do. When you get up on stage and people are spending money to listen to you play and sing, you owe them your best performance. And it's very difficult to do that if you're using some kind of substance for whatever reason that may be. And I'm glad to see that trend has changed. Randy never did drugs, didn't drink alcohol. He was a great influence on all of us. And I was just very fortunate to be in First State Bank on 2 separate occasions with him. He was a great guy.
It's my opinion that First State Bank to this day would match with any band in the United States of America.
Well, thank you.
And you know, we lead the way in rock and roll, except for the British guys a little bit. But I'm telling you, I remember you guys were doing it's a big Peter Frampton song off the Camel album, which became his big hit live.
Do you feel?
Do you feel? And these guys were just, Randy and Donny were just a step ahead of everybody by picking the right songs. I think that was most classy about that act, because you're right, Randy was a pusher. He didn't do drugs. He lifted weights. He was like a man, and he had this long hair, looked like a lion. You know, everybody in our age, we're just a click behind you guys in age, but we wanted to be y'all.
He was. Everyone admired Randy, and I wish that more of his music was out there in the public domain for all of us to enjoy, besides just the work that he did with First State Bank. But it was a great time playing with Randy, and I really enjoyed it. But one of the things that I remember about those days, too, when First State Bank was based in Arlington in the mid-1970s, and we were doing the Southwest Club circuit that all the bands, what I would call the good bands, did. It was us and Lynx and Lightning,
Right.
All Fingers Band, Bob Lincoln's band Motion. There were many great local bands in the Dallas area at that time. And one of the things that we tried to do in First State Bank was package songs in such a way that it might have been a song that someone had heard many times, but they'd never heard it quite like this. We used to do a 50-minute Led Zeppelin medley that took up an entire set. 50 minutes back to back, no breaks, of Led Zeppelin music all smashed together over a 50-minute time span. And that Led Zeppelin medley used to get such a great response because people had never heard at that time bands do things like that, on at least local bands in a local market like Dallas. They had never heard that kind of thing before. And you're starting to see some local guys being more cognizant of how they present cover material to the audience, and I think that's a great thing. But Randy was a great influence on us, and as far as packaging our cover stuff in such a way that it made it fresh and new for our audience.
Well, you know, moving on from Randy to you and what you gave to that band, Randy could sing as high as a dog whistle, and you could sing tenor to a bird whistle. And Terry sang, Shannon sang, and when you attack these songs like Yes, gosh, all the hard stuff, man. I mean, as I went back in my mind, you guys did all the creme de crop sort of music. Your vocal influence was huge in that band because you were the next singer, and you had to sing those high harmonies. And I got to admit that impressed a lot on me, that I like to impress on our listeners and viewers that it should come back to where people want to get together because they can sing. You know, I don't hear the harmonies from bands like we used to.
I agree.
You know?
That seems to be kind of a lost art, and that's when you and I worked together.
Yes.
We were fortunate to have other singers in the band to be able to structure nice, tight 3-part harmonies,
Right.
which for me is one of the great joys of playing in a band with other people is creating those vocal harmonies. I really enjoy that.
You absolutely did.
And it has an impact on a crowd.
Well, you know, moving up past First State Bank, you created a band called Blaze. And there's some local heroes around here. Gary Stone was part of that band. Who else was in the band? David Epps.
Shannon Day was the keyboard player. David Epps
played drums.
played the drums and sang. And
Tony Black.
Tony Black was probably
monster.
the primary guitar player. We also had Danny Rowlett for a while, who was with Calico,
Right.
and the Hill City Band,
Big band in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Danny is who I'm still in contact with.
Oh, great.
It was the only guy I ever heard that could exactly duplicate Barry Gibb's voice. It was
That's
uncanny the way he could sound like Barry Gibb. We used to do Nights on Broadway, the old Bee Gees song that was not a normal piece of cover material that you heard bands cover back then. And he said it just like Barry Gibb. It was incredible. Yeah, Danny was in that band, and Blaze was a good band, and I'm fortunate to be able to play with those guys.
Now, who booked you guys? It was called Mom. Who was it? Moms? I know we talked about Herca.
For a while, it was primarily Mike Herca at Southwest Management,
Right.
and Charlie Hatchett,
Yeah.
a talent agency out of Austin,
Yeah.
were the two primary. But for a while, I was in the band Lodella,
Yes.
which Lodella was Danny Rosenauer was the leader of that band, and his mom Emma Rosenauer was her Fort Worth agency that booked that band, and she booked us a little bit as
She
well.
took you far the north, right? I mean, she took you out of Texas into Oklahoma,
Yes,
into Kansas,
yes,
kind of
Kansas.
thing. Which,
Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh my God! See, back in the old days, we gathered fans by what rotation we did. It wasn't no social media. You went there and got them one at a time, didn't you? So people that could get with Emma. I mean, you were in a hallowed ground. Herca, man, that was a hard thing to do. Now Charlie Hatchett, he booked guys like me.
Charlie Hatchett had,
but he's a good guy.
He had great talent. Charlie had great talent.
I love Charlie. He's a good guy.
Is
he still alive?
And also, I want to mention C.W. Kendall.
C.W. Kendall,
based in Dallas, who's still alive and still with us.
Is
Actually, from what I understand, he's still performing. And C.W. is probably about 80 years old, and he's doing country club gigs, playing piano and singing, which that demonstrates that once you get music in your blood, it's there to stay.
Timeless.
You never lose it. It's always in your heart.
When you play for a living music, you don't have to grow up. You have to pretend that you're a grown up.
Well,
you have to do the right thing. But inside, you don't have to grow up. I think that's what makes us passionate. Donny, you've always had passion. It's what I love about you. You've inspired me. Even when you were in the RLP, you were the most inspiring thing in that band. Do you remember our days? We were playing this rock club called Matley's, and then these guys come in, and this band came out called Motley Crue, and it just overwhelmed us because we just came out of this era of NXS and all that stuff. Red Skies at Night Owl. They were drilling holes in their guitars, and Donny and I looked at that and said, we might need to make a step. And that's when I asked Ron Matley, I said, we don't want to play here anymore. Remember that?
Yeah.
I go, these people, the crowd is dressed better than we are, because they were in all that garb, torn stuff.
That was a big deal in the 80s.
It's a big deal. But we went to McAllister, Oklahoma, at a club that Ron Matley owned. And that's where you and I and Donny was very instrumental. I said, we do country up there, Ron said. And we did a set of rock, a set of country, set of rock, set of country, or the vice versa, set of country, set of rock.
And sometimes we would actually mix it up within the sets.
Yeah.
We do 3 or 4 rock tunes,
Yeah.
3 or 4 country tunes back to back.
Right, and this was in '84.
Back before people were doing it
Right.
like they do today.
Right. But at the same time, we had an outstanding band. We had 2 keyboardists, LD. What's our other friend's name? It's down in Corpus now.
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly, I love him. LD Lumpkin, Brian Kelly, Joel Parks on the drums, and you and me. And, you know, I want to say this, modesty set aside, we won the first heavy metal award, Dallas Observer.
And would they call it heavy metal or hard rock?
What they called it was the first heavy metal.
Yeah, that's right.
And to semi-quote it, it said, you know, these guys are a picture of the past, but we approached our hard rock music like with heavy metal. And we certainly did. I mean, we were
covering
awesome.
Whitesnake before anybody else was.
That's right. Donny was singing Whitesnake. He sang all the high stuff. Boston, we did. Then we had a great band. You know,
That really was a great band.
Dire Straits. Man, we knocked the heck out of that song. Money for Nothing.
Money for Nothing.
Man, we had a smoke machine. We had lights, and kill ourselves trying to put all that stuff up. Remember?
Oh gosh, yes.
And Donny had to. He was, please, Donny, had to tie us into 220. And he was the only one brave enough. We wouldn't get near him. But the 220 thing, it was like, okay, Donny, we need you now. He's like, oh, God, here we go. He was the 220 guy. But we had some fun times in RLP, and we were quite versatile until they started changing the drinking age. And that socked us, didn't it?
It did. It socked a lot of bands that were working at the time.
Yeah.
It did. It had a lot of impact.
Right. Let's compare that to this day now. You know, that took a lot of money out of our pockets because it went from 18 to 19. That was tough. But 19 to 21, clubs collapsed. You know, our account up in Abilene.
Well, yeah, if you'll remember, too, Ricky, in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't uncommon for a band to go into a club on Monday, play 6 days, break down and load out Saturday night, drive to another town on Sunday, load in and set up, and start playing Monday night in another town. You do that nonstop, and one band 6 nights a week in a club, and there was business to support it.
Yes.
And the change, the societal change, that the impact that the drinking age had impacted that greatly.
Right. It just took revenue from us, and it made us kind of switch gears. And eventually, I had a chance to go with Head East. And I'm one of those loyalty kind of guys with my friends, because Donny and I had been working on our own music in the studio. And I want to set the record straight right now. The Choice of Weapons Head East album, myself, Donny, Joel Parks, and Brian Kelly, along with Roger Boyd and Kurt Hansen, we cut that record. Basically, we took our 2-inch tapes and said, finish the record. They didn't get the record out in time. I quit, but we had an outstanding record with the wrong credits.
I think so too. And those, I know that you maybe have ambivalence toward some of the material, but I thought the songs that you contributed to that album were by far the strongest songs on that record.
I appreciate
those
that.
were great songs, Ricky.
Well,
every single one of them were great songs.
I listen to that record now and I hear our harmonies. Man, Donny and I, we were known for a while when we were together in rock and roll as being a great duo as far as singing. I mean, I could sing tenor to his melodies and vice versa. And we did. I can forgive. You're Going Under. Man,
Avenue.
Into the Avenue. My gosh, those songs were like off the chain. But it's kind of a record that was shoved under the carpet by the Head East. That's it. That's it. It was certainly heavy metalish before. It was too heavy metal for Head East. We had a little squabble when we did Alley Fest. We promoted ourselves as members of Head East, which we were. We had a little contest between lawyers, and we had to eviscerate the name Head East the last couple of days before that concert. No big deal. We know the truth.
We know the truth.
We were there in Corpus Christi recording. We recorded most of it at Pantego. And,
those were your songs, and the notes that were played were, for the most part, played by us.
Played by us. And see, it was big for me to pull Donny in because I didn't enjoy the way. Look, when you're a player, you get comfortable with players, and we were very comfortable. If we're going to make a record, I've got to make it comfortable. And so we brought Donny in, and Roger Boyd was okay with that. And Roger, just want to say hello to you. We're talking about this record because we legally can. But look up Choice of Weapons, Head East. It didn't mean 2 cents to Roger, but it meant everything to us. And so we're going to come out with a band called Head East Texas. Is that right? One of these days? Anyway, Donny, as we move along,
Head ETX.
Head ETX rocks.
Head ETX.
Head ETX. Wow, man.
And ETX.
Boston Chris is coming up with his mind never stops.
There's a bad joke there, and I'm not going to touch it.
But anyway, let's talk about some technique. You have crafted. I mean, you played with Randy. You played with Tony Black. Recently, you've been playing with Eric Dobbins, who's phenomenal. I had the opportunity to join you guys.
Musician.
Incredible player, and good mind, good
And
music
a great
mind.
guy. And a great guy.
The most essential thing. As
No-
far as making a
no
good
drama.
band. No drama. That excludes me. But anyway, but your technique has changed through the years, and you've always been spot on bass player. I mean, you've been given that God-given knack for you listen to it, you got it, and you can hear the changes before they come by the melodies that I've noticed and we've talked about. But your technique now is beautiful. When I was working with him last year, and I must say Donny helped me personally receive the ETX Music Awards Guitarist of the Year 2017. I give all the credit to Donny and the guitarists we had around us. We had Ron Holcomb, we had Sammy Brazier, and we had Donny, who played guitar a lot of times. We had Cornbread. He made racket, and I love him.
Cornbread.
But
But Eric probably was.
he's one that made us raise the level. But being able to play in that mix and you anchoring, Donny anchored this thing down with Terry on a snare drum, Terry Salyer. And it was just off the chain. And when these guys would take rides, because we Texans tend to sound like we're from Texas as guitar players, it was a challenge for me, and Donny certainly supported me and pushed me towards, hey, hang in there, Rick. Keep going for it. I like what you did. And when he thinks it's average, he's going to just be okay. But when he thinks it's good, man, he lightens up. And that's a big Christmas tree for me. So I thank you for that.
Oh, man.
But your technique with Terry, and you've done this with Marty Arbiter, Terry, Gregg out of Tyler, you have developed
David.
a technique. Who?
David Epps.
David Epps, how could I forget him? You've created this technique where you and the drummer have eye-to-eye contact. And you're helping them, they're helping you back by giving you what the band needs. And that's a groove. That's a slot. It's a pocket, and it's not on your shirt. It's something. Tell me, what point of your tenure, you've been at this 50-plus years now, when did that become most important to you?
I'd say that, and I have to mention all the guitar players you listed, also the great Richard Raines.
Thought about him today, that we should give him kudos.
The incredible Richard Raines, God rest his soul,
Yes.
was another guitarist that I've been fortunate enough to work with.
There you go.
But I would say it was back in the 1990s, early 1990s, when I first became convinced, and I had always thought about it, but I became convinced that finding the groove, and when you talk about finding the groove in music, you're talking about finding the correct tempo and feel of your rhythm section that makes the song move and makes people want to tap their foot or dance or respond in a way to that rhythm. And this could be true of any kind of music. Finding the proper linkage between a bassist and a drummer provides the foundation for making the groove what it needs to be in music. And about 1990, I realized the groove is the most important thing. If the song doesn't feel right from a rhythmic standpoint, bass and drums, then it doesn't matter how good that the musician's on top, the singer's on top of that. None of that matters because they're fighting against the current. Whenever your bass player and drummer focus in on creating the correct feel for a song, then that makes everybody else's job easier. It makes it easier for a guitar player to lay his parts in there because he feels that groove, and it relaxes him to where he can lay his parts in, solos, rhythm, whatever, in such a way that it adds to the song instead of having to fight against a groove that's not there. That became really important to me about 30 years or so ago.
Okay.
That's when it really started to surface, and that's when I also began to live by, as a bass player, the mantra that it's not just the notes that you play, it's the notes that you don't play. Or they're just as, the notes that you don't play are just as important as the notes that you play.
Way to go.
That approach, coupled with always finding the groove and getting you and your drummer to lock in together on that groove and maintain it throughout a song, it's what makes music work for an audience.
You know, Donny, I want you to know you're one of the best guitarists in Texas.
I play guitar because I like
He
it.
loves it. He could play the whole lead with Eric to Hotel California. That's not easy. But I'd like for you to explain to our future bassists out there, because you do more than play bass. You program, you do keyboards. You would cut ahead of everybody with the downloading and stuff way before everybody else was until now, when we're getting back to real guitars and drums and bass. But tell our young viewers how important is the duration, the length of a note. As a bassist, as Donny pointed out, the space is just as important as the tone or the note. But talk about the duration.
The duration, I'm glad Ricky brought that up. Note duration is what makes music breathe. There's a term in music called legato, which means playing notes with no space between them. Just one note after another, letting the previous note ring until you pick up the next note. That playing too much legato is what can make music sterile. It can make it sterile because there's no breath in the music. When you take a break from playing a note, when you play a note for a certain duration and then release that note to leave space for the music to breathe, you bring music to life. And note duration for a bass player, it's critical. It's maybe the most critical thing other than playing the correct note. And sometimes it's more important than playing the correct note, because a bass player, there again, you're looking for that groove, and just playing simple things like a single note bass line. You're leaving, if you'll notice, I was leaving little small amounts of space between each one of those notes. And the notes are different volumes as well. Accenting notes on the downbeat, laying back on notes that are on the upbeat, and putting space between those notes. It's what makes music breathe. Note duration is critical, Ricky. You're absolutely right.
You know, and may I add that, as you say, and you play some of that's harder, as we point, that would be the pulse. Would you call it the pulse?
Pulse. Yeah, exactly.
So you've got duration, pulse, and you've got the groove. And I think that's critical for bassists and drummers.
It's really critical for any musician.
Yeah, any band.
But it's most critical for a bass player and a drummer.
Yeah, absolutely, because it does help a guitarist find the spots where we can play either up on the upbeats, the downbeats, whether we can go fast or whether we should stay slow.
And then the volume, what we call dynamics
Absolutely.
in music.
Oh yeah.
I've done some work in the last couple of years with a great blues guitarist from my neck of the woods named Wesley Pruitt, and Wesley is He tours a lot around the Southwest United States. He's a fabulous musician and performer. And in playing more blues-based stuff with him, and hearing some of the bands that we shared stages with, what you notice about blues musicians, the good ones, they're very cognizant of dynamics, of volume, moving up and down within a song to accentuate passages in a song and make one punch and then bring the volume down to create drama in music. Dynamics, volume changing up and down, that's what creates drama in music. With correct note duration and dynamic movement in music, you give music life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said, well put. And youngsters out there that want to be an aspiring bass player, take this advice and learn your way. Because if Donny were to show you his way, you may not understand it, but you will understand it eventually. And what he's telling you is they should be paying you for that information. I've learned it with you. You've taught me. I think it's essential. And a drummer like Terry Sawyer, who's got a little more of that tickety-tackety, 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 kind of mixed with your style of bass playing, and you and him clicking together, there's nothing much prettier than that, man.
Well, Terry's a fabulous drummer, impeccable technique.
Technique. He's just a technique man.
And when he and I play together and we make eye contact, we know we can look in each other's eyes, and just by the looking at each other's eyes and the movements of our head and body with the music, we can telegraph changes in dynamics, tempo, all the things that make music live and breathe.
Absolutely. That's 50 years of you guys playing together. Man, that's off and on. And you and I played off and on for 40 years.
Yeah. And I treasure those times.
I do too. Donny, you know the truth, but I got to know. When does a guitar player become a bassist?
Well, it happened for me as a natural outgrowth of my exploration in music. I got my first guitar at age 11. Saw the Beatles on TV, on Ed Sullivan, like so many of us that were alive during that time, in that February of 1964. And that Christmas of that year, I got my first guitar, old Silvertone guitar, and started playing guitar first. Played guitar for about 2 years in my first little local band, and then I was asked to join another band that was working all the time, guys a little older than me, as a bass player. And I picked up bass as a natural outgrowth of wanting to continue to play music with other people. And I discovered that I kind of had an affinity for it. It just felt so natural for me. It doesn't have to happen that way, but I would wager to bet that most bass players start out as guitar players, discover the bass, realize that they like it as much or more than playing guitar, and gravitate toward that. The attraction for a musician in playing bass over playing guitar, if you want to view it in those terms, is that the bass guitar is in contact with both the rhythmic content and the melodic content of music. And whereas that's also true of guitarists and keyboard players, but it's less true for them than it is for a bass player.
You know, I was going to really think that was a comical question, but that is a very good logical answer. I think we've teased in the past about he's kind of been shoved out by all the other young guns. Now he's on bass and he plays like a guitar player. I've experienced that myself.
The thought process is different.
Gosh.
When you strap a guitar on or a bass on, your frame of mind needs to change to match the instrument. If people that have seen me play, you know that 99% of the time when I'm playing guitar, I play with a pick. 99% of the time when I'm playing bass, I play with my fingers. And that is a manifestation of the thought process that changes when you move from guitar to bass.
You know, Donny inspired me he's got a beautiful way of being frank And most people would take it and be upset, but to me, it's golden. He's given me some advice each decade that has stuck with me, that I've passed on to others. But when I was going to play bass, when I had Daryl Dasher, trying to exploit his talent, he played bass for me. I sat down with the drum machine, and I learned to try to create the space. That's the first thing I wanted to do, is learn the duration and give it the space and the air. I still come off sounding like a guitar player.
No, the last time I heard you play bass, you sounded like a bass player.
Well,
you did.
Thank you. Might have been in Shreveport, I remember, because I remember telling everybody, don't let me down, because the best is out here.
Great.
This is a portion of the show that is really dear to me, and it's about family and spirituality. You have a lovely wife, Shelley. You got a great son, Chance. And I just want you to tell our audience how important that family was to you, because you went for a long time. You were like, we were together, man. We were like outlaws on the road, like you said. We worked 6 nights a week, off to another club. 6 nights a week, off to another club. End of the month, we'd come home for 4 or 5 days, work the weekend, start over again. That's not good family.
That's a huge stress.
That's a huge
family.
stress on family. I'm a living testament to that. I unfortunately gave up a lot because, when you're running towards the top of the mountain, sometimes you got to climb half of it. You had made the decision that you got to a point in your life, you and Shelley developed a relationship, got married, you had Chance. How important was that? Because I know how important it was to you, because Chance was the apple of your eye. Tell the audience how important it was to you.
Art, music, or any kind of art typically comes from a place inside an artist of conflict. That's why so often you see many musicians, artists, they come from a place in producing their art of conflict and stress within their personal lives that they use to fuel the creative process. And the flip side of that is a lot of times it makes for wonderful art, but it makes for a terrible home life. And it also generally leads to an untimely end for many artists. So many of those whose candles burn so brightly extinguished in their 20s or early 30s because of the stressors that the creative process places on a family unit. I've felt guilty earlier in my life to allowing my goals as a musician and a performer to supersede what was better for me as a person in my relationships with others. I fortunately learned, and I would say I learned this in the late 1980s for real, that with the help of my wonderful brother, who once told me that money, fame, social position, accomplishments mean nothing without quality relationships. If you don't have quality relationships, family, friends, associates, colleagues in your life, if you don't have those relationships in your life, all the rest is for naught. It means nothing. And I finally agreed with that in the mid-1990s, and I made a conscious effort to live my life strengthening relationships in my life. And I've gotten a little better at it as I've gotten older too. It takes practice. Relationships are tough, whether it's friendship, romantic relationships, a wife, your parents, your children, whatever those relationships are, they're tough because life is tough. And life places stresses on relationships every day. And what makes family and friends so important in a person's life is the stability that comes from placing the strength of commitment in your life. If you've got the strength of commitment and you've got communication, you can have successful relationships with anybody. If you've got good open lines of communication and a commitment to making the relationship work. You can make any relationship work: a marriage, a friendship, a parent, a child. Any of those relationships will always work better if you have strong communication and the strength of commitment. And I incorporated that into my life in the early 1990s. And after I got married in 1992, I realized that I wanted to be a dad. And I had never wanted to be a dad prior to that, because in my earlier years, I always felt like that having a child was such an awesome responsibility. It was such a huge, it's the only real power that we have on this earth, is having children. It's the only real power, creating another human life. And I always felt the responsibility was so awesome that I didn't want to take it on. Something changed in me during this time and made me want to be a dad, made me want to be a father. And when we started trying to have a baby, I became very focused on what it meant to be a dad and doing all the things necessary to be a good dad. And by the time my son's birth came around in June of 1998, I was fired up. I was ready big time to be a dad, and that desire has never left me. I spend time with my son every week. I make an effort to do things with him and bring him into my life as much as I can, but still give him the space to be who he is. And you have to, as a dad, you have to assume several roles. You have to be that mentor and that authority figure, but you also, there needs to be a component of friendship in there to give that kid a soft place to land. And these relationships, family relationships, they're what really makes life worth living. It brings the joy to life that nothing else can. Money, accomplishments, fame, social position means nothing without good relationships. And I love this guy right here. I love him just like he was my own flesh and blood. And I feel stronger about that now than I ever have. Most of my relationships are that way. Most of my relationships with friends and family, they're stronger now than they've ever been, because I've made a conscious effort to put my time and effort into nurturing those relationships. All of us need to do that. We all need to nurture our relationships, because I promise you the payback is huge.
Well said from the heart, Donny. You know, I am still trying to repair my relationship with my daughter, who's 26, and you really ran up there, and I remember how happy you were to have Chance. And then, you know, you began to teach him things that you did, shoot the basketball, and he was an ace basketball player in high school, you know, which we're going to get to a little later. But let's move on to your brother that you mentioned, Sonny. Your brother Sonny and my brother Gene had a band called the Foresters that every Saturday would go over to one of the stations in Texarkana or Shreveport.
Yeah, I think Shreveport. I think it was Channel 3.
It was Channel 3 in Shreveport. And they did the folk music. They were big. Just land is your land.
Hometown Hootenanny.
Well, Hometown Hootenanny, 4-part harmonies. J.W. Parsons, Royce Blair. There were a couple of Jimmy Johnson. You know, God rest his soul. I love that guy that kind of intermingled to that band. But,
You got some stories about him, too.
Well, we got. I love Jimmy Johnson. He lived till he didn't, you know. And,
yeah, you're right.
Those
my brother and your brother
yes.
in a band together before you and I were.
Right.
And that's what always made it seem kind of fortuitous that you and I would eventually
absolutely.
work together. The fact that our older brothers made music together, and then some years later we got together and began to make
right.
music together.
It felt like brothers.
And that all comes from the building strong relationships. I loved my brother. My brother was a huge early influence in my life, who also probably the greatest catcher ever to come out of East Texas. Was turned down a signing bonus in 1961 with the New York Mets to take a college scholarship so that he could get his education. He knew what he was doing, and his influence on me can't be overstated in making me into the person I am today. He always had a way of pointing out distant goals for you and making them seem so reachable.
Wow.
And that the encouragement to step out on that limb, to push for something beyond your reach, he made that all seem possible for me. And that is one of the things that comes from strong family relationships, is the positive influence that family and friends can have on you.
Absolutely. And, you know, you have always been my brother. And I'm going to tell people about this, about Donny in our early years. He was a mentor. I mean, I was a little kid opening up for him, and he took his time through a big crowd of people to come to me and go, hey, look, you stick with it. That meant a lot to me. I didn't even know that our brothers sang together, but we've always
at the time I didn't either.
Yeah, and if we've had a situation, we went to each other like men and discussed it like men and let it rest, and then had a sandwich or a Coke or a beer. And of course, we don't drink beer, but you know, that's what I love about our relationship, because talking things through, that's important. Whether it's your brothers or your friends, because your friends can be your brothers.
And those of us that are lucky enough to have those strong friendships, that for many folks can take the place of family if their family relationships are not real strong. One piece of advice I can give to anyone is nurture the good relationships in your life as much as you can. Focus on that. The bad relationships in your life, try to avoid them. It may be a family member through some sort of dysfunction that you don't have a good relationship with. Always try to be positive toward that person. Always try to be positive toward everyone that you meet. Nurture the good relationships. Don't give too much attention in your mind to the bad ones.
Amen.
Maintaining a healthy mental attitude makes you better at relationships.
That's true.
I can't overstate the importance of that.
Donny pointed out to me early on, just throughout even when we weren't playing together, we had some connection. And he pointed out to me early on, when I was trying to cross over the country, he said, you know, Ricky, you need to work on your social skills, because working with Donny was a piece of cake. Talk to him, we talked to each other like brothers or friends or musicians. But there were some people that you kind of had to bear down on, and Donny was really instrumental in saying, hey, look, you got 2 ears to hear and one mouth to speak, so instead of speaking so much, won't you listen? I owe that to you. But let's talk about your father. Now, you've got your brother, who's a great catcher. By the way, people used to come to batting practice to watch Donny at batting practice. He could knock a baseball, and he broke more windshields than anybody from Longview High. But and that's the truth. But let's talk about your father, who was also a singer. Let's start right there. You take it over.
My dad, Vernon Hyles, was a founding member of the original Rangers Quartet, gospel music group, who was actually the very first gospel group ever to be credited with a gold record. And this is back in the 40s. They had a very successful nationally syndicated radio show that they broadcast out of WBT in Charlotte, North Carolina. For like 7 years, they did a 15-minute radio show 4 days a week, and then they would go play concerts all over the country at night. My dad, if you look up the Rangers Quartet and read about what they did, and if you're interested in exploring that music, I encourage you to. The Rangers did something with vocal harmonies and vocal structure within gospel music that had not been done prior to them. The Rangers and the Blackwood Brothers were the primary exponents of bringing jazz-based and something more than just the normal barbershop type harmonies that you heard in vocal groups in the 40s and 50s. My dad always encouraged me with music. When he recognized things that many people from his generation didn't recognize. When in the mid-1960s, when I was really hot for playing music, practicing 3 hours a day, every day, I was consumed with it. He always encouraged me, and I was listening, the stuff everyone was into, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, all that kind of stuff. When I would expose my parents to this music, and I would, like, especially Beatle music, I would play Beatle music for them and say, this is what we're working on right now in my band. And my mom would go, it'll never last. It'll never work. It'll be dead in 10 years. And my dad would say, those guys have got something. He was at the opposite end of the spectrum from my mom on that. She wasn't into it, but he recognized that there was something special about that music, and he was always kept an open mind toward new music, even into, right up until the time of his death. He kept an open mind about music, which always encouraged me to be open-minded toward any kind of music. And I confess, when I was younger, and I was into progressive rock stuff back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, I had a disdain, a kind of a aloofness toward any kind of music that wasn't progressive, because I thought that because perhaps it didn't measure up on a technical basis to the stuff that I was listening to or that I thought was cool, I learned how wrong I was. There's great music in every genre. I don't care what it is. And I did eventually learn that. And I have Ricky to thank for that in helping to open my eyes and ears to country music as much as I have. I dig country music. And when I was younger, I didn't. It's all in keeping an open mind. And my dad taught me that. He was instrumental in helping me keep an open mind about music and making sure that I did what was important. Practice, get in front of people and play, always work on your skills. And he was a great man.
And I want to point out that in 2007, Donny's father and the Rangers Quartet were inducted into the Southern Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Donny flew to Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, received the plaque. And so his father and the Rangers Quartet will forever be immortal with a huge music foundation, the Southern Gospel Music Group. The Blackwood brothers, man, they were up there.
That was an incredible weekend for me.
Oh, it had to be.
And my family getting to go to Dollywood and at the Southern Gospel Music Hall of Fame and speak at the induction ceremony and see and talk to some of the people that my dad was instrumental in influencing. The Gaither Brothers gospel group performed a medley of Ranger songs while I was there. I was sitting up on the stage with them while they performed that, and every one of those guys came by to me after the ceremony and shook my hand and commented on what a huge influence my dad's music was on them. And there's nothing in the world that makes any kid prouder than to have people come up and say, "Hey, your dad's cool. Your dad done great things for me." I was lucky. I had a father that cared about what was important and lived his life that way. It was easy for me. So I know there's a lot of folks that it's not that easy for. And I want to bring back the focus onto the relationship that you had with your parents.
Yes.
Fabulous people. I loved your mom, Lucille, as much as I've ever loved any woman in my life.
She loved you.
And she, I know you owe her a lot.
Everything. I miss her to this. I told somebody this morning. I said I miss her so bad now, just because
every day. And
she's with me more now as she's in heaven than she was when she was alive, a phone call away. So I understand that your story is beautiful. Your father, your brother, and it made this super mega talented mentor to me. And I'm glad that you and I had the opportunity to kind of make those changes. And yes, for me, I started with gospel, then country, then we got into rock and roll. And it was hard to get us to do anything else, was it? I mean, I ain't playing that.
Especially in the 70s.
Right, in the 70s, man. We're going to play some Bad Company, some Zeppelin. Some, we're going to get after it.
The golden age, really,
Yeah.
of rock music in the 1970s
Still
and,
popular.
and 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Donnie, we're now in the social media age. There are good things that help musicians like you and me that, we had to gain fans one at a time. Now we can get multiple fans through the social media. Tell me your opinion of the social media, good and bad.
Very quickly, I think the social media obviously has had a huge impact on all of our lives. It's been good in the respect that in many ways it has made the world a smaller place. It's brought people together. It's allowed folks the opportunity to communicate with one another on a scale that was never possible before the computer age and before the age of the internet. And what that's done with music is it's made music of all genres a little bit more readily available to everyone. You can go out on the internet nowadays and find any kind of music you want and at least be able to expose yourself to it, and then use social media as a vehicle to explore that music or promote that music if it's something you're doing professionally, which is great for the artist in one respect. But the downside to that is that with the advent of streaming music, I feel that we've paid a price in quality, not of the music itself, but in the way it's delivered. Your standard MP3 file or streaming download does not have I don't care what kind of music it is, does not have the depth and character, channel separation, the stereo image. It's more two-dimensional than a compact disc or a vinyl record, and you're seeing a lot of music fans rebelling in the marketplace against that right now with the resurgence of vinyl. Vinyl is making a huge comeback. I don't know if people know this or not, but last year the Beatles, who have been broken up since 1970, sold 70,000 vinyl albums in 2017. That shows that there are people still out there that have passion to hear music in its most pristine form. And social media can be guilty at times of packaging music as a product to get it out to as many people as possible. What you pay for in that ease of distribution is the quality of the product.
That's beautiful. And let me tell you this, that is well put. And you talk about channel separation. Donnie's going to be a regular, if Boston Chris agrees, which I know he will, he's going to be someone who's going to be a contributor for my show in these sorts of things, and we'll get more into this. I got to wrap it up by asking you one thing. Now, Donnie and I scrimmaged with each other or against each other just to go smack people on the road in basketball. Now, we don't look like basketball players, but Donnie, tell our swan song story about some Major League Baseball players.
Yeah, we don't. But that was our way of getting exercise on the road. Basketball it's marvelous exercise. And when we were in our 30s, late 20s and early 30s, we were what we would call serious weekend warrior basketball players. And we would, any town we would go to, we would try to find a gym to go play basketball to get our exercise in the afternoons before going to the gig that night. When we played in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there was a 24-hour health club in Arlington called Charlie Club that had a gym that was open 24/7 around the clock. And we used to go there at night after gigs to play basketball. And one night we show up at Charlie Club to play basketball, and in the gym, out there dribbling around, are Texas Rangers, Pete Incaviglia, Mitch Williams, Steve Buechele, and Oda B. McDowell.
And Coach Wilkerson was there, I think.
And they were in there playing basketball when we walked in, and we got into Ricky, myself, Joel Parks, and my buddy Steve Holbrook, Holbrook, challenged those four guys to a little full court 4-on-4, and I hate to say it, these pro athletes, we kind of mopped the floor with them.
The Wild Thing stomped off the court mad, and one of them guys looked at me and goes, "Are y'all for real?" And we go, "Yeah, we do this a lot." And they just kind of shrug. And Oh, it was a beautiful moment in our life. Let me wrap it up by saying, Donny, I love you.
I love you too, my friend.
You will always be dear in my heart and essential to my playing ability. And I look forward to getting myself corrected, heart and back, and get out on the road with you and do more shows with you and Eric, Gregg, Terry, whoever, with Shinebox. That's a beautiful band with some beautiful music. But I want to thank you for being part of the Ricky Lynn Gregg Show right here on ETX Rocks. We love you. Donny, I mean, we're here. You're holding the guitar. I've got the Hall of Fame guitar over here. Let's just make a little noise. How about it?
Hey, I'm game.
Okay. Everybody get ready. Donny and I are going to take off on a little bit of this. Kick it, Donny. Yeah, boy. Yes, oh, that's beautiful. Dish it out, Donny. Yes, sir. Excellent, baby. That's brotherhood playing there. All right, Donny. One of the best songs you and Richard and Marty got together.
Let's wait till
wrote.
he takes a drink.
Let's leave that. Me too. Man, this stuff is fun, you know. And seriously, let's figure out a way to have you more often, and let's talk about you know, we've covered a lot, but there's a lot more we can
I'll
cover.
contribute any way that you guys want me to. You know,
Well, we need to talk more about social media. We need to talk more about techniques. We need to talk about basketball. We need to make this kind of like a sporty. We need to talk about baseball. You know,
He could be just a recurring guest.
you like that idea?
Yeah, we can just put him on any episode with anybody.
Right. Insert him in there and that kind
Yeah,
of
we
thing.
just have a segment, like a regular segment with Donny. If he's down to do it. We're just filming once a month for this show.
and do you do it? Do you schedule it like different days?
Just whenever everybody's available.
Good. Because my schedule changes. You know.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
Ours does
we got it.
too.
But
you know, it doesn't have to be every week, but it's special. You're a very good speaker, man, and
Well,
you know so much.
Anything that I can do to contribute to the effort here, I'll do as much or as little as
Well,
you
that would
guys
make
want.
it easier for me because then I can pull myself out of the show here. You know, I'm on camera all the time. I'm oversaturated on ETX Rocks program. So
I don't know if you're oversaturated or not. Everybody loves you, brother.
I appreciate that.
Everybody loves that
but-
Boston Crystal.
But
Yeah.
listen, man, health permitting, I don't care if we just get together right here or somewhere, your place, my place. Every now and then, we just need to get together with a couple guitars and a bass,
Amen.
and just fool around.
Well, I got good news for you. They're moving to Golden,
We're trying to move to Golden.
and that's closer to
where?
you.
It's right outside Mineola.
Oh, Golden.
Yeah,
Golden, Texas.
Okay, I think I know where that is.
Yeah.
it's new equipment and
5 minutes from K-Moon.
Yeah.
It's only about 30 minutes from my place.
Yeah.
wow. See, that's good. It's only probably about 45
That's
from where I
we're
live.
trying to
But it's, beats,
We will be
Where are you
moving
staying
there.
now?
man. We'll just do
Okay,
this,
all
and I'll tell you, it's been a blast. But
we'll have a-
Are you okay?
We'll have a steel
well,
player retreat
yeah,
then,
I'm
too.
good. I've been running from women. Okay, and if I don't run, they'll find me. If they
And
find me,
most
and
of
I'm
them are
weak,
faster than he is.
yeah, yeah.
So
And it's tag team. They hate each other. They've really screwed up a lot of things in my life. Disability.
No.
Well, I've got rectified it. They disabled me.
Women? Present
No
company
offense.
accepted.
Females.
No,
Females.
I know what you're talking about. Women, not ladies.
there's
So-
no way this could possibly be
Hey,
out already.
psychosis knows no sex.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, what I did was
There-
I went on a journey for a couple of months, 2.5 months of just it was a journey, and it was beautiful. I kind of dipped back into Lucretia's life. I dipped back into
Yeah,
Jackie's
yeah.
life as friends because I'm trying to make friends. I don't need any more enemies. Well, either one of them got it after
You guys
they
are ready to
accepted.
go
it.
whenever you.
Okay, so I finally said, well, I'm going to go camping, and I just found 3 great camp spots, and I spent the last 2 weeks camper to cabin to camper, and out on the river. No TV, no nothing, just me and God, the Bible, and my telephone.
Gasp! No access to Ricky Lynn Gregg show.
And I mean, trust me. I mean, I would come into town and get things, and
Are you do you have a guitar with you that you can pick up and play whenever you want to?
I haven't wanted to play it.
Okay.
The doctor said lay off, and I'm telling you,
So he's still
just-
playing. So
yeah.
should we not be doing this?
No, hey, this is the 5th time I picked up a guitar. I swear to you. I mean, I picked him up at the house. But, oh, this thing sounds
We're
good.
watching him carefully. He did a short 5-minute segment last month in the last show. He handled it wonderfully. I'm talking under the lights like this. Just today, watching him, he's not sweating as much. I don't know if you've noticed that, Ricky, but
Oh, yeah.
you're holding up under the lights a whole lot better this
Yes,
month.
sir. Yes, sir.
So we're watching him very carefully. We're letting
Yeah.
him going at his pace.
As long as he's taking it casually.
2 months ago, you should have saw me after I left Lucretia's. I was about the size of. He's 4 inches taller than I am, but I was about the size of Boston Chris or bigger. That was.
And you
I'm
don't wanna be
about to
there.
have a heart explosion. That was her doings. I came back down here in a week. I had to lose weight quickly because I'm about to go in AFib. You can just feel it. I mean, you got little signs. And in about a week, I got about 10 pounds down. But man, it wrecks your face and your body, blowing up, going down. It's kind of like a balloon. Eventually, it's going to be all floppy.
Yeah.
So I decided to go on the run. I quit taking my medicine except for Lasix, Brisopril, and Eliquis. That is one of these new super anti-stroke drugs. That says, oh, he's having a stroke there. Run to it. Let's fix it. It's about $4 pill a day. I'm on a get it free for a year.
Cool.
And now, as I approach disability, I can have my ablations. I have to get AFib fixed, cauterized, or frozen. And then a flutter, all I can do is like torn pants, like sew it, and it's still going to flutter. But a flutter ain't nothing compared to, well, you're pushing blood back into your heart or back in your lungs.
Yeah.
But the AFib, man, is a wreck. Because if I was on a gig when I flutter, I might as well just sit down. Because, when I was telling Donny, I can't, nothing's matching up. Remember me saying that to you?
Yeah.
I go, nothing's working. I don't want to take a ride. I don't want to play. I'm sorry.
I guess he doesn't want you singing either, right?
Well, he just said you might just want to take it easy for a while. But, we had a field party and had a West Jeans play, and I got up there and played. Shit, I didn't get down. I sang a few songs. I go, this feels okay. And then
And when you were done, you felt all right.
I
See,
I didn't push
That's
it.
a good sign.
And so I did a couple of house parties with another singer.
But he goes overboard sometimes with the music, and so it's just having somebody there to reel his ass in.
It helps to keep
You
it
know how that is,
unplugged,
Donny,
too.
with him.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Music's an
It's
addiction.
spastic,
You don't know
yeah.
when to stop.
Well, it's
We put him on that one, plug him in if But
I need to bring
I'm
my.
afraid he would. Yeah.
Donny's seen all octagons of me.
Yes.
Just so you
He's,
guys know, we're still rolling, just waiting for that.
All right, baby doll. Hey, let's. Donny, you wrote a beautiful song with Richard Raines and Marty Osborne.
Actually, it's Richard's tune.
Well, it was Shinebox, and you were part of that. And your contribution is off the chain. You sang it. Would you sing it for me now? And I'd like to accompany you.
I'll be glad to. You play along with me and do a little solo in the middle for me?
I'll do my best.
Yeah, the song's called Make Friends with Heartbreak.
Make friends with heartbreak, baby. Woo!
Well, I got used to the smoke in this bar room. I got used to those bright neon lights. The way that you left me this morning, I guess I'll get used to goodbye. So punch up a line on the jukebox. Let George Jones sing me a song, and I'll have one or more, and then I'll walk out that door, and I'll make friends with heartbreak tonight. Don't have a reason to stay here. I don't have a reason to go. Everything I ever wanted just packed up and walked out that door. So punch up a line on the jukebox. Let George Jones sing me a song, and I'll have one more, and then I'll walk out that door, and I'll make friends with heartbreak tonight. I'll make friends with heartbreak tonight.
Off the chain, baby. Don't forget about TD Cares, baby. My guest and my friend and my brother, Donny Hyles, on the Ricky Lynn Gregg Show, sponsored by ETX Rocks, with my friend Boston Chris, our producer. Have a good day. Have a good month. Stay tuned.
From the unknown to the stars, from the couch to the car, from the unheralded and the unheard, to the legends and beyond, it's where we all belong. Yes, this is where it all starts. From every genre, from every plane, this is where the music's played. So tune right in, won't you bring a friend? This is where it all begins. Welcome to the show, let the music flow of every style